We had a professor of economics who actually had a 14-year-old son and a baby brother. And one day this 14-year-old son asked the professor, "Can you please explain to me how does capitalism work in South Africa?" And the father was trying to explain him, and then he said to him, "Okay, I earn the money, that is capital, and your mother, she manages the house, that's management, and the maid does the work, so she represents labor. And you represent production, that's the amalgamation between management and the professor, and your baby brother represents the future." So that's where it started. So one night, while the production was sleeping, 14-year-old, with his baby brother, he got a terrible smell. He got up and he couldn't sleep, the baby missed himself. So he doesn't know what to do, so he goes to the mother, he tries to get her up, she's fast asleep, she would not get up. Then he goes in search of his father, he can't find his father. He goes in search of the maid, and when he gets to the maid's room, as he knocks the door, he opens the door, behind the door stood his father. And his father gave him a tight smack and told him to go back and sleep. So the poor guy went and slept the entire night in that smell. The next morning during breakfast, he said to him, "Dad, you don't have to explain to me how capitalism in South Africa works." He says that capital exploits labor, management is fast asleep, production is hard hit, and the future stinks. Okay. We heard a lot about ethics and in this last 2 days. Understand one thing, ethics and corruption go hand in hand. There's no such thing that you can separate it. And we heard a lot about Enron. We heard, and I will give you a little bit different perspective of Enron. The New Collins Dictionary and Thesaurus in one volume, 1987, defines ethics as the philosophical study of the moral value of human conduct and of the rules and principles that ought to govern it. A code of behavior considered correct, especially that of a particular group, profession, or individual. The moral fitness of a decision, cause of action, etc. Corrupt, open to or involving bribery or other dishonest practice. A corrupt official, corrupt practices. Now we know lots of government officials are corrupt. As Dr. Gula said earlier on, in South Africa we've had that, and we still have them now. It's morally depraved, which is also corrupt and wicked, putrid or rotten, made meaningless or different in meaning by scribble errors or alterations. This is exactly professional copies. To become or cause to become dishonest or disloyal. To deprave, again, is to corrupt, to infect or contaminate, to cause to become rotten, to alter a text, etc. from the original. A lack of ethics in companies across the world. A number of companies practice inter alia across the world have been unethical. Enron, the chief financial officer amongst others, were the mastermind behind the fraudulent accounting schemes, and this was used to disguise their debt and liabilities. This was to avoid negative earnings outlook and retain investor confidence and the credit rating. Enron's executive employed increasingly questionable accounting practices and crafted a deceiving web of partnership. Monies were transferred to these partnerships to artificially inflate the bottom line. Now basically, what it's saying is that the reason for the misrepresentation, the reason for the misrepresentation is because partnerships are not audited and making it possible for Enron to hide its financial situation from its investors. It is clear that they were prepared to make a profit at any cost. Principles were definitely compromised. Now, unjust enrichment. Now, the concept of unjust enrichment basically states that nobody should be unjustly enriched at the expense of another. Now, for example, we as HR professionals, if for some reason or other we overpay somebody or payroll overpay somebody, that doesn't mean to say that person can now benefit from that money. Basically what would happen is that we have to go through a process in order to try and recover that money. So nobody can be unjustly enriched at the expense of others, and this is exactly what Enron was doing. Unethical and illegal activities were condoned and even encouraged. Enron therefore had a very deep culture that systematically gave precedence to profit over ethics. So they believed that profit was more important than the lives of the people. Their focus was solely on profit, greed, power, influence. They were most definitely poor role models for employees. Enron's code and community social responsibility policy became a form of window dressing ethics. In other words, they use ethical artifacts to disguise a rotten corporate culture. Now, artifacts are basically objects made by human beings. It's also a type of cultural in nature. They adopted the philosophy of profit at all costs, irrespective of the consequences. Top performing employees were rewarded extravagantly. Now, these guys were given luxury cars. They became favorites of the executives. And when we talk luxury cars, we're not talking about just BMWs now. We're talking about, anybody can tell me what's a luxury car?
Ferrari, Tesla.
Lamborghini or whatever you call it, and all these other funny cars. Anyway, top performing employees were rewarded extravagantly, as I said, but poor performance were retrenched and redeployed. Now, employees' reviews were held in public. This tells you the culture of that organization. I mean, where did you ever see, imagine me interviewing people here and we appraising you and giving you a performance appraisal in public. We normally say that you praise in public and you discipline in private. And this is what they were doing. They were not praising in public, they were actually castigating them in public, disciplining them in public. And if they were not doing well, they were either sent to the retrenchment or redeployment offices. The company had a reputation for hiring only the best and the brightest employees who showed the willingness to transgress rules, who were focused on greed and instant gratification. The reward, selection, and dismissal processes promoted greed, selfishness, and jealousy within the company. Now, Arthur Anderson, we heard yesterday about him a lot from the judge. Arthur Anderson, auditing firm of Enron, had to surrender the license to practice as certified public accountants. And remember, here in South Africa, we got SICA. SICA represents the chartered accountants. And if any chartered accountants are in trouble, they will be kicked out. And we know that we have issues with KPMG, and we have issues with some other auditing firms in South Africa. They were involved in hiding the scam, and they actually committed the fraud. Today, internal and external auditors are under scrutiny across the world, including the Big Four in South Africa. The Big Four in South Africa is PwC, KPMG, Deloitte, and Ernst & Young. Now, Deloitte are also a little bit in trouble. KPMG is in trouble. Thus far, PwC and Ernst & Young, they are still fine, and they also operate across the world. Enron and other companies around the globe. Another one is WorldCom. We heard about it yesterday. Telecommunications giant was not just the biggest accounting scandal in the history of the United States. It was also one of the biggest bankruptcies. It had crooked its books, and this came on the heels of the Enron and Tyco frauds, which had rocked the financial markets. So it's not cooked, it's crooked. because they can't cook. Anderson was he was also involved. Anderson, an auditing firm, was also involved in WorldCom, audited disclosed to investors what may be the largest case of accounting deception in US history. Approximately $3.8 billion sleight of hand designed to boost profit. Now, sleight of hand, this is a financial sleight of hand of the worst sort. It's a deception. Now, yeah, we say a profit is a reward for a risk successfully undertaken. Now, obviously, when you got shareholders, when shareholders actually invest their money, there's a risk they do take, and they expect a reward for the risk. Now, most boards would want to give the shareholders a certain amount of returns on the investments. Now, I just want to quickly say to you the understanding of profit as a reward. And I'll give you an illustration. As a farmer who has actually decided to plant some potatoes. So he bought 10 potatoes and he planted the 10 potatoes. Now one night, when he planted the potatoes, the donkey was watching him plant the potatoes, and in the night the donkey went, dug up the potatoes and ate up the potatoes. The next morning when the farmer went there, he found no potatoes, and that now represented a loss for him. On the other hand, the donkey did not see it, the donkey did not eat the potatoes, and the potatoes grew, and he's made 1,000 potatoes out of that, and he sold that. And he spent 10 rand for the potatoes, plus his labor, giving, say, 200 rand. The balance was his profits. So that is a reward for a risk successfully undertaken. So when you get investors doing that, that's basically what they're doing. They expect a return on the investments. Another scandal was Marcus Juster and Steinhoff in South Africa. Scandal is the biggest corporate fraud in South Africa. It wiped out over 200 billion from Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Thomas Hewlett is another one that publicly admitted to his unethical conduct, financial mismanagement. Thomas Hewlett was one of the biggest sugarcane business in South Africa and also in Africa. The irony is that Thomas Hewlett executives are swimming in the gravy train. On the other hand, their unethical conduct has resulted in employees facing a bleak future. Now, in terms of the Companies Act, we've got a King 3 and a King 4. The board has a fiduciary duty. Basically means that they cannot trade recklessly and negligently. Board can be held accountable. Now, when we talk about the 3 years, if a board is basically responsible for something and they trade recklessly and negligently and they've left, it does not really matter, because after 3 years, if you think that I've resigned from the board, nothing could happen. You can still be charged. You can still be held accountable, and if there's no insurance cover, they can take away your house and whatever and whatever. Now, in recent years, South Africa experienced unprecedented corporate governance scandals and failures of many companies. Government was forced to establish systems that promote higher standards of ethical conduct, accountability, and transparency. The South Africa's constitution is founded on the principles and values of the rule of law, accountability, responsiveness, and openness. In the above cases, it proves that business ethics is about being guided by a set of values. Ultimately, good ethics is about honest people with integrity making decisions and not about well-written codes of corporate social responsibility policies. Doing the right thing, even when no one is watching, is ethically correct. Now, for HR, there's something that we need to do. We need to be bold, we need to deal with things. Now, we need to look at lifestyle audits. Lifestyle audits are something that you need to look at. If you've got a clerk working in your office and your clerk is earning 10,000 rand a month or 20,000 rand a month, and you find the clerk is driving a 7 to 8 BMW and he's coming with different cars, you got to wonder, how is that clerk doing that? A clerk is working in an accounting department, how? So you need to do lifestyle audits on people to ensure that they are actually not living beyond their means, and if they are, where are they getting the money from? Because white collar crime is the most difficult crime to actually detect. If somebody steals from you, you can catch them, but when somebody steals through the books, it takes you years before you find it. Whistleblowing. Whistleblowing is another very important thing. People need to be brave to try and blow the whistle to report corporate fraud. In South Africa, we have the SETA, the Sector Education Training Authority. This is in terms of the National Skills Fund. It's about training. There we've had fraud as well. State capture, Dr. Gura spoke about it. State capture, the ESCOM, the Public Investment Corporation, the Zonda Commission, the Nugent Commission, the various commissions, and Zuma, President Zuma has created, he lost for this country 500 billion in one night when he fired the Minister of Finance, Minister Nena, and he replaced him by Royal. And then after pressure from Ramaphosa and everybody, he brought him back, Pravin Gordhan. Workplace bullying, you got to know what workplace bullying is all about. Sexual harassment in the workplace, vicarious liability. In South Africa, if you act for your company, and if somebody is sexually harassed and nothing has been done, the company can be held vicariously liable. In California, it's the other way around. If an HR manager appoints somebody in a position and tell them how good the organization is, and 6 months down the road, the company retrenches, the HR manager can be held vicariously liable. In Indonesia, a woman that reported sexual harassment, because she recorded that as evidence, she was actually imprisoned for 6 months and fined $35,474. So this is a type of thing that's going on in our country, in our world. You've got India, DRC, America, Venezuela, Cuba, Sudan, and South Africa are all involved with exploitation of women. Reckless and negligent trading I spoke about. Moonlighting is another form of corruption and ethics. Among ethical values are trust, honesty, integrity, respect, responsibility, and acting in good faith. Unethical behavior range from sharing confidential information without consent. Good faith is basically that you should not be competing with your employer or speaking behind your employer. And confidential information is entrusted to you. Charging placement fees or taking a bribe in cash or in kind is unacceptable. HR must act in the best interest of the candidate and the company, both not for sexual gratification, etc., offering a job in return for sex. Don't place misleading job advertisements. Also implement the triple bottom line in business ethics. That's finance, people, environment. I got the last slide. Sorry, I missed that one. Okay. Don't advertise to satisfy a process. Be bold if you have a preferred candidate. How often we find that our GMs or our directors tell us we got so and so that in a position, you advertise just for the sake of advertising to follow a process, but meanwhile they know who they want to appoint. Now we need to be bold to stand up to that. Interview correctly to ensure proper matching, fit for purpose. Treat all candidates equally. Fair opportunity. In terms of employment equity in South Africa, unfair discrimination is taboo. Solicit only information that is necessary and looking at inherent requirement of the job, a specific characteristic. And maintain confidentiality on the use and storage of candidate information. Inform candidates appropriate of selection of decision. Candidates don't like to be rejected, but it's worth sitting and not knowing that they have not got the job. It is crucial that we are ethical in the recruitment process as we are facilitating life-changing decisions. Sorry, I went too fast and I didn't look at it. The human resources must implement a clear ethical conduct policy, ensure that all and sundry are aware of the code of ethics and what is required of them. HR is the custodian and has a responsibility to protect the organization, keep a transparency register, record gifts, conflicts of interest, etc., manage conflict of interest, deal with bribes in the workplace, ensure that the concept of quid pro quo is non-existent. It's not that something, you give me something and I will give you something in return. Deal with anything that is in violation of the law, sexual or otherwise. Encourage whistleblowing. Conduct exit interviews. Why do we conduct exit interviews? Some of the time we do it just for the sake of doing it, but we don't share the reason that people are leaving the organization. An exit interview will give you a good measurement of what the reasons people are leaving and where our culture is wrong. Whistleblowing, who is a criminal, 50% could go either way, 25% lie, steal or cheat, 25% will never do anything wrong. In the right circumstances, 75% of people will commit a crime, as Michael J. Connor, a criminologist. Who blows the whistle? Honest employees, citizens, disgruntled syndicate members, concerned third parties. Most crimes are committed with the knowledge of people who do not support this illegal activity. And the quote I'd like is, he who passively accepts evil is as much involved in it as he who helps perpetrate it. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.